I stare at the wedding ring on my finger, its weight now feeling more like a shackle than a promise. Years ago, if someone had told me I'd fall in love with a woman who already had a child and that I'd adopt her child as my own, I would have laughed. Yet here I am, alone in an empty living room, surrounded by memories of a family that no longer feels like mine. It's hard to understand how everything became so complicated. It all started that night at a friend's party, the first time I saw Claire. She was the kind of woman who didn't need to say much to capture a room. Her quiet confidence and warm smile drew people to her effortlessly. I thought I'd found my perfect match. Little did I know, that moment would be the start of something I could never have anticipated. On our third date, Claire told me about her daughter, Lily. "She's 6," Claire said with a soft smile, and I could see the love in her eyes. At that moment, I realized I was falling for someone whose life had more layers than I'd expected, but that didn't deter me. I cared about Claire too much for her past to be a deal breaker. What about her dad? I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. He left when Lily was just a baby, she replied, her voice carrying a hint of bitterness. It's just been me and her. Something in me softened. I admired her strength, raising a child on her own, and I felt a surge of protectiveness I hadn't expected. Over the following months, I met Lily, a quiet, shy girl who'd peek at me from behind her mother. But she gradually opened up, and soon, we were like our own little family. After about a year together, one evening on her couch, Claire turned to me and asked, "Do you ever think about us getting married?" I was caught off guard, but the thought had crossed my mind. "Yeah," I said, smiling. "I love you, Claire. And I love Lily, too." Her face lit up, and she squeezed my hand. "Would you consider adopting her?" I paused, feeling the weight of her question. I hadn't expected to become a father, but I loved Lily like my own. "If that's what you want, I'd be honored." Our wedding was a small ceremony, intimate and perfect. Lily wore a little flower crown and acted as the ring bearer. After the ceremony, she hugged me and whispered, "I'm glad you're my dad now." That moment was etched into my heart, and I felt like I finally had the family I'd been searching for. However, the adoption process was more complex than I'd anticipated. Legal paperwork, waiting periods, it felt endless. One evening, Claire sat me down in the kitchen, her face pale. "Michael, there's something I need to tell you." My stomach tightened. "What is it?" "Lily's biological father, James, he's back. He's been trying to contact me." My heart sank. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want to worry you," she said, her eyes pleading. "I thought he'd go away like he always does." Her words didn't ease my concerns. It wasn't just worry. I felt betrayed. "Claire, we're supposed to be a team. We're in this together." "I know," she whispered, her eyes misting. "I just didn't want to make things harder." But things only got harder. James was persistent, sending letters, making demands. He wanted parental rights, claiming he deserved to know Lily, despite abandoning her for years. I was furious, but I tried to be patient, hoping it would pass. Claire, however, became distant, spending hours on the phone, and it felt like she was slipping away from me. Two. One evening, after another tense dinner, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Claire, what's going on?" "You're constantly talking to him, and Lily's acting strange." She sighed, looking exhausted. "Michael, I'm just trying to keep things civil for Lily's sake. He's her father." The word stung. I was her father, the one who had been there through everything. "So that's it? He shows up, and you're willing to let him back into her life just like that?" Claire looked away, and I knew things had shifted in a way I couldn't reverse. As the months went by, Lily grew more withdrawn. Once, I was her confidant, the one she'd run to with her joys and fears. Now, she barely looked at me, answering in monosyllables and spending more time in her room. Claire dismissed it as teenage stuff, but I sensed something deeper. She was slipping away, and I felt helpless. One evening, I found a small bag of weed in her room, hidden in a shoebox. My heart sank. I waited until she got home, my mind racing, trying to think of the right words. When she finally walked through the door, I confronted her, trying to keep my voice calm. Lily, I found this in your room. Can we talk about it? She rolled her eyes, her face twisting with anger. Why do you even care? You're not my real dad. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stood there, speechless, as she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how everything had fallen apart so fast. Over the next few months, things spiraled. Lily barely came home, and when she did, she ignored me. Claire defended her, saying I was too strict, that I needed to give her space. The tension between us grew unbearable. We'd once been inseparable, but now it felt like we were strangers sharing a house. One night, I followed Lily to a coffee shop, my heart pounding. I knew she was meeting someone, but I didn't expect to see James. They sat together, laughing, as if they'd known each other for years. I clenched my fists, feeling a surge of anger and betrayal. When I confronted her later, she yelled, "He's my dad, and you're just the guy who married my mom." I barely recognized her anymore. It was as if everything we'd built meant nothing. Not long after, Claire and I separated. She moved out, taking Lily with her. I was left in an empty house, surrounded by memories of a family that had slipped through my fingers. Weeks turned into months, and I tried reaching out to Lily, sending texts, leaving messages. But all I got in return was silence. Months later, I planned a small graduation party for her, hoping she'd come, hoping she'd see that I still cared. I invited family and friends, decorated the house, and waited. But she never showed up. Around 8 p.m., I got a text. "I'm with mom and dad. We're celebrating here." Mom and dad. My heart shattered. She hadn't just ignored me. She'd chosen them. Chosen the man who'd walked out on her all those years ago. I spent the night cleaning up the party that never happened, feeling like I was erasing the last remnants of the family I'd tried so hard to build. A few days later, she showed up at the house, her face indifferent. "Can I have my college fund?" she asked, as if we were strangers. I looked at her, feeling the weight of everything I'd sacrificed. "Lily, I saved that for you because I wanted to support your future. But you've treated me like I don't matter." She crossed her arms, her face hardening. "So you're saying no?" "I'm saying you have to meet me halfway. Respect is a two-way street." Her eyes narrowed. "Fine, I'll just ask Dad." And with that, she walked out, leaving me standing there, feeling like I'd lost her all over again. The final blow came when I learned that Claire and James had gotten married. All those years, all the lies, and now they were living the life I'd tried to create. It felt like a cruel joke, and I was the punchline. Now I sit alone in this empty house, surrounded by memories of a family that was never truly mine. They've moved on, living their new life without me, while I'm left with nothing but the ghosts of what could have been.